Hello everybody! Today I want to cover some essential advice on audition self-tapes that you can incorporate immediately and level up your audition game. I'll share with you the single biggest mistake I see actors make in self-tape auditions. It's something casting directors don't always consciously even notice, but definitely stops actors from moving forward to producers, which is where you want to be. Most actors don't even realize they're doing it, and as soon as I bring it to their attention, they almost always replay all of their past auditions in their head and say, "Oh my gosh, I wish someone would have pointed that out sooner." Well, you learn things when you learn them. But before I get to that, let me introduce myself. I'm Gunnar Rohrbacher, and I've worked with thousands of actors on their audition technique, both as a professional audition coach and as a casting director. In this video, I'm breaking down the 3 essential tips that have helped my clients book roles consistently. Now, what's that self-tape mistake I mentioned? I'll get to that when we talk about tip number 2. But first, let's dive into what might be the most overlooked aspect of auditioning. Tip number 1, preparation is performance. A lot of actors think preparation and performance are separate, that you should prepare, and then after that's done, you should perform. But here's the truth. They're the same thing. Let me elaborate. As an actor, your final offer is the sum total of the homework you've done and the choices you've made. When you're truly prepared, your performance feels effortless. You're not searching for lines. You're not wondering where to stand. You're not thinking about the technical aspects of producing your self-tape at all. You're simply being the character moment to moment, living in their skin. The preparation you've done informs your performance result. Here's where I suggest you start. When you get your sides, you'll have to read through them first, obviously. But after the very first read, I challenge you to slip into the character's point of view and start comprehending the material and the dialogue through their lens. Immediately become their advocate and take ownership of the role. Whatever the character's name is, or if they have a title like barista, just start thinking in first person. So it's not, what does the barista want in the scene? Or what does she want in the scene? It should be, what do I want in the scene? Read through your sides as soon as you possibly can. Even if you can't start fully prepping them yet, read through them so you at least have that first look out of the way and the comprehension is settling in. I know a lot of actors might be working when they get that email notification or out running errands, out with friends, out in the world, whatever. The longer the scene is in your consciousness, the better it is for you. So get it in there as quick as you can. Then do thorough homework when you get a chance. What do I want in the scene? Am I experiencing conflict? Is that conflict internal, external, or both? What's my emotional journey, etc.? In my experience, actors tend to do better homework with full scenes and make the mistake of thinking that 1 or 2 lines don't require any homework. That's a really bad approach. It might not take long to do thorough homework on a few lines, but you should do it. You should really think through the reality of your character's world and the moment-to-moment experience of theirs in the scene, even if it's brief. Otherwise, your performance will come across very takey, like you understood the scene, but it never filtered from your head down into the rest of your body. So a quick example. If you're playing a scene and your character is a barista, and you have the one line, "What can I get you today?" And the opposite character replies, "Someone less annoying to take my order." Well, then you have an emotional journey, and a pretty big one at that. If we assume that it made sense to begin the scene with your character feeling chipper, and then you're insulted, casting needs to see an honest emotional transition, not a take. Feeling it, not showing it. How would you feel in a moment like that? No one likes to be insulted for no good reason. So I think there are a few reasonable options. Number 1, you might feel bummed out. I wouldn't go much further in that direction, like hurt or devastated, because that's too extreme a reaction for a mild insult from a stranger. And if you're auditioning for one line, the story is not about you. You need a reaction, but it shouldn't be too much for the moment. Number 2, you might feel confused. This happens a lot in co-star or smaller roles. The story is about the main character, and then they happen upon your character as their story unfolds. In this example, it sounds like the other character, probably a main character, is having a bad day, and their insult didn't really have anything to do with you personally. So it would read well for you to feel a moment of confusion, knowing that you didn't do anything to motivate the other character's bad mood. Number 3, you might feel irritated or irked. Again, I wouldn't go further into feeling angry or enraged, too much for the moment. And again, the story isn't about you. I'm hard-pressed to think of other feelings that would make sense in a role of that size for a TV show or film audition. So that's pretty much the range of your best options. Whichever emotion you choose, you need to really feel it and not just show it on your face. This is exactly what I mean by takey. Bummed, confused, irritated. If you express those with your face without actually feeling them, well, it looks like that. But if you personalize a minor insult from your own life and internalize the emotion so it's genuine, your reaction should look more like this: bummed, confused, irritated. So for all 3 of those reactions, I was thinking a word or a thought in response, not just showing the idea of the emotion on my face. I know it sounds obvious that actors should be prepared for their performance, but in truth, they're so often not. They've spent time thinking about the script and making choices, but unless your homework skills are on point and your choices are personalized and heartfelt, you're not prepared. You likely appear to be self-directing or thinking through your decisions. Casting directors are always going to notice. It would only take a few minutes for me to do the homework on that line, but I would do it. And the actors who don't, quite honestly, look like they don't know how to act. It can come off as sketchy and broad, so be careful. Too many actors think broad acting has to do with huge choices and big scenes, but it can happen in a moment. And then think of what your want statement is, even if it's as simple as, I want to provide efficient service to the next customer in line. That's specific. It's true for our example scene, and it helps keep you grounded in the world of the character. Understand the context of the scene, what happened before and what will happen after. Make sure you're off book, but always keep the sides in hand as a safety net. If you can get off book for any self-tape, that's probably going to be to your advantage. If you go in for a live audition, always hold your sides. It's not casting's job to feed you lines if you go up and forget them. When you're fully prepared, your confidence shines through. Casting directors and producers can sense it immediately. Remember, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your preparation. Whew. That's deep. Now, for the big mistake I promised to reveal. We should always be acting with our whole body, from the top of our head to the tip of our toes. Most actors don't, and too many actors don't even know what I mean by that. So let's unpack it. So auditions, whether they're live or self-taped, are inherently paralyzing to actors. You're isolated on a mark at an awkward distance. You're expected to give a winning performance with a reader who may or may not be acting along with you, and your subconscious knows that you're being recorded by a camera in this rectangular frame. Nothing about that configuration is conducive to showcasing your best acting, which is why I recommend audition technique classes to everyone and why I teach audition technique myself. Typically what happens is that an actor's legs become mere tripods, holding their body upright. The torso tightens, our breathing becomes shallow, and squeezes the performance up into our heads, because whether we're thinking about it or not, we know that's all the frame of the camera is capturing. And we end up acting with pretty much just our head and our head voice, when we should be acting with our whole body. Now, that doesn't mean we should needlessly be moving our body around. That's not my point. That's not it at all. It means we should be always activated on the mark, in touch with our core. The center of our bodies is between our belly button and our groin. Your core is down here. Whether you're standing or even sitting, when you're acting, presenting, or hosting, you're in a much stronger position if you're engaging the muscles of that area. Your lower back muscles, your abs, your glutes, and people often say, engage your diaphragm, which is on point, but most people don't even know where that is in their body or how to activate it. Your diaphragm, by the way, is a thin dome-shaped muscle that separates your chest cavity from your abdominal cavity. And the next step is imagining your speech radiating outward from you like a sun or an aura that's resonant all around you, because your whole body is energized. If we don't take care to warm up our voice and our body before we hit the mark, we run the risk of a thin performance. Shallow breathing will result in a diminished version of your best take because you're only involving your chest, your throat, and your mask. This happens because we know that's all the camera is focused on. Without realizing it, we exclude the parts of our body we know aren't in the frame. Our body is there, but we're not using it to our fullest advantage. Your feet have a job when you're on the mark. Their job is to ground you. Your legs have a job. Their job is to support you in a strong, limber stance like an athlete, so you can't be thrown off center, not locked at the knee and rigid, where a strong wind might knock you over. Engaging your core gives you better breath control and helps you breathe deeper and more naturally when you're in the spotlight, under stress, or both. Shallow breath is death to a performance, as is holding your breath. I see it all the time in actor auditions, and what's shocking is actors don't see it at all. Sometimes I coach actors as they audition, and then we send it off together. But I also get asked to review auditions after they're sent off, and often my very first thought is, wow, you're barely breathing at all. And of course the actors want feedback on choices, character, comedy, and I give those notes. But I also point out how much of their time on camera they weren't breathing in and out while they were speaking, or barely, that they were actually holding their breath during their dialogue and while the other character was speaking, and then it's their turn to speak and they still hadn't taken a breath, and we eventually hear one of the worst things that you can ever hear in any audition. The audible intake of breath along with the breathless click as we begin to speak. It's also known as the green click in casting. Green meaning new, as in new, inexperienced actor. That's the default assumption by casting, and it's never good. Even worse if you're actually not a new actor and you're coming across that way to the industry. You should be breathing steadily throughout your performance with air underneath your words. We live in a world that asks us to self-tape most of our auditions now. Yes, good acting is defined by comprehension of the material, strong, appropriate choices, and interpretation. It's also defined by proper vocal engagement, charisma, vibrancy, presence, relaxation on the mark, dare I say, star quality. And that can only shine through when you're acting with your whole body, even when you're just standing or sitting. Tip number 3, try switching up your position in the frame. Most actors position themselves directly in the center of the frame for self-tapes, which is logical, but it actually creates a static, not so interesting visual that doesn't give casting directors a full sense of how you'll look on camera. Instead, try this. Position yourself slightly off-center, with your reader positioned to the immediate right or immediate left of the camera for a natural eye line. And then ensure your entire face is visible the whole time you're auditioning, and that you're not looking directly into the lens. This creates a more cinematic look and gives you room to make small movements that feel natural. If there's any need for movement at all, depending on your size, it offers you the opportunity to step into center later in the scene, which can look dynamic and give it an interesting feel. Now, always face the camera. Never go into profile unless there's a specific reason. But that's just the beginning of using self-tapes to your advantage. Here's a few more self-tape specifics while we're here. First, ensure you have lighting from the front slightly above eye level to eliminate unflattering shadows. Nobody wants those. Second, and perhaps most crucially, make sure you have clear audio. This is arguably more important than video quality, but most cameras are fine at this point anyway. And last, use a solid neutral background, blue or gray. Work particularly well. Most actors know that, but I'll add one more nugget. If it's in your budget and your ability wherever you do your self-tapes, it helps to have both a comedic and a dramatic setup. For example, you could use a gray background with lighting that's a bit dimmer with some shadow in the back for drama, and a blue background for comedy, and take the lighting up a notch. Drama is generally moody, comedy is typically bright. Different backgrounds and lighting can help set a tone. It's a subtle way of enhancing the atmosphere for different types of projects. Not necessary, but something to consider as your journey as an actor moves forward. The beauty of self-tapes is that you can do multiple takes, but don't fall into that perfectionism trap because it's perfect isn't there. Don't do any more than 5 takes at the most, probably 3 is better, and choose the best one. After that, you lose spontaneity. The self-tape advantage is control, but use it wisely. On that note, I recently read an interview with 2 casting directors I've worked with, Mike Page and ARLIE Day. I've had them both come teach workshops at my school. When asked for tips on self-taping, here's how they responded. Mike said, "I think the biggest mistake I see is over-taping. We can tell that they've done 20 plus takes or whatever, and they've ironed out all of the humanity. I strongly recommend no more than 3 takes unless you really screwed something up." ARLIE Day said, "Also, don't over-rehearse, because if you book it and you go on set, you're not going to be able to take direction. You need to be flexible and fluid and be able to change the performance." It's a great interview. I dropped a link to it below. So let's wrap up our 3 essential audition tips. Number 1, preparation is performance. Number 2, always act with your whole body. Number 3, consider your setup, starting off-center and switching up backgrounds and lighting. If you implement these 3 tips, I guarantee you'll immediately stand apart from the majority of actors auditioning for the same roles. Before you go, I'd love to hear which of these tips resonated most with you. Drop a comment below. I'll respond if I can. And if you want more audition advice, hit like and subscribe, and check out my other videos, advice on craft and career. Thanks for watching, and break a leg at your next audition. Gunner, out. Please hit like and subscribe to help build a global community of artists. And check out the links below. I love you.